Hi there, and welcome back to my transition vlog. Now, I know what you're going to be thinking. For those of you who've been watching regularly, what the hell am I doing still wearing my wig after last week's big reveal of what was under it? Well, the truth is, I'm rubbish at styling. Okay, so there we go, it's out there. I tried straightening it, but it was awful. So the wig went back on. At least I've still got that option. But anyway, I'm glad we got that one sorted out. So anyway, what I would like to do is talk about today the very thorny issue of trans people competing in sport. Now, with me, I have a world expert on the issue, so I'm very lucky to have that. So I have a lovely lady here called Joanna Harper. Hello, Joanne.
Hi, how are you? And I'm not wearing a wig, but I've had 15 years to grow my hair out. So
I'm very envious, Joanna. So, would you like to tell viewers a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are now?
sure, I started my transition in 2004, and I've always been a scientist. I've always been an athlete, and like many other people, I was always trans. I just was in denial. But I started hormone therapy in August of 2004. And as a scientist, I knew that I was going to get slower as a runner once my testosterone started getting lower and my estrogen was higher. But I thought it'd be kind of a slow, gradual process and that it wouldn't be that dramatic a change. But I was completely wrong. Within 3 weeks, I was running noticeably slower.
Wow, 3 weeks.
Within 3 weeks,
Wow.
um, within 9 months, I was running 12% slower. And 12% is the difference between serious male athletes and serious female athletes. So I had lost my complete male advantage as a distance runner in 9 months of hormone therapy. And so that was, very interesting to me, and I never would have expected it. And so it led me on a path of discovery. And so I started learning about the endocrinology involved, the exercise physiology involved. And I work in cancer therapy, so while I'm a scientist, these are all new realms for me. But I started learning all these things, and then I also started finding other trans distance runners, and the same thing had happened to them. And so I started gathering data, and eventually I got enough to publish a paper. In 2015, I published the first paper to analyze transgender uh, athletic performance. And it has opened up a whole new world for me since that paper's been published.
Absolutely, and you're in hot demand with the media, and you've been writing articles for lots of newspapers and all sorts of things, haven't you? And I believe you've been advising the International Olympic Committee.
Yes, I first I first was invited to be an advisor for the IOC in 2015, and they don't necessarily call every day, but when they do call, we talk, and it's very nice. They have flown me to Lausanne on 2 or 3 occasions, and that's always a wonderful thing. And when I go, I'm in a room of 20 people who are experts. Most of them are either exercise physiologists or endocrinologists. There's always some lawyers in the room because there's lots of legal issues. But I'm the only trans person in the room when we're talking about transgender athletic issues. So, so it is an interesting environment. There's one other member of the group who's an intersex woman. She's an athlete and a professor in Spain. So those we're the only two are from the affected group. But it's been a very interesting process, and I've also been involved with the IAAF as well.
Wow, amazing. So actually getting on to the subject then that we want to talk about, there's been a lot of it in the media just recently, and there's been some quite high profile athletes that have been talking out about it, specifically Sharon Davis and Martina Navratilova, who you're going to be meeting next week, aren't you?
Yes, I'm actually in the area right now because we're going to be filming a BBC documentary, and it's on the state of affairs with transgender athletes, and Martina will be part of it, and I will be part of it. And there will be filming of each of us separately, but we will be filming a scene of the two of us talking together, and that should be a very interesting experience.
Yes, good luck with that. For those of you that didn't know, Martina recently said that transgender athletes were cheats, basically, and she's since apologised for using that word, but I don't think she's retracted it, as far as I know.
She hasn't retracted
no.
her sentiment that she does not feel that transgender women should be competing against cisgender women.
Right.
So she has made that very clear, but of course she acknowledges that the rules allow it, and so if trans women do it, they're not technically cheating. She just doesn't think it should be allowed.
But as you said, that through your own experience of running, you've been that much slower since being on HRT, and I've noticed it in terms of strength. I mean, I'm not an athlete, but being a photographer and filmmaker, I'm often carrying lots of heavy equipment, and I've noticed just in terms of the loss of muscle mass. That, for instance, I've got a big bag of lights that I carry around often, and I've always found that heavy. But now I'm finding it almost impossible to lift. So I think I'm going to have to change the lights that I put in there to get something less heavy. And that's just noticeable. And I've been on HRT for 13 months now. So I think a lot of it just depends on how far into the journey that the athletes are, I suppose.
Yes, although the biggest changes occur in the first year, and athletic changes after a year on HRT are fairly minimal. So you're not going to notice too much reduction in strength beyond what you've already lost. But but yes, in those first few months, trans women, of course, prior to transition, will have all of the advantages of a male athlete, and that's why we separate male athletes from female athletes, is to allow women to win things like Olympic gold medals and professional sports contracts. And so prior to medical transition, trans women have all the advantages of male athletes. But hormone therapy, as you say, takes much of that away. Not all of it. For instance, height doesn't change at all. Trans women are on average 4 or 5 inches taller than cis women. And that height advantage is important in many sports. There are, of course, sports where it's a disadvantage to be taller, sports like gymnastics, or if one is a jockey, for instance. But in general, there are more sports where height is advantageous than disadvantageous. So not all of the advantages go away. And it's very much a sport by sport thing. But there are just enormous changes in the athletic capabilities of trans women as a result of HRT.
And do you want to talk us through everything about testosterone levels as well? Because there's been much talked about that.
Yes. So it's a complex subject, but first of all, when scientists use the word range, we talk about what's known as the 95% confidence level, which is the middle 95% of in any subjects you're taking. So the lowest 2.5% and the highest 2.5% are thrown out. And so if we talk about the men's testosterone range and the women's testosterone range, there's a chasm, a gulf between them. Testing methods have changed, but using the newest testing methods, women are between 0.8 and 2 nanomoles per liter, and men are between 8 and 30 nanomoles per liter. But beyond those numbers, the women's range is a very peaked, narrow range. And so from the top of the female range to the bottom of the men's range is 5 standard deviations, and that's an enormous gulf. There's no overlap. There's nothing close to that, and the difference in testosterone levels is the primary driver of the sex difference between male athletes and female athletes. But trans women, once they go on hormone therapy, the goal is to bring trans women down to typical female levels. And it's usually very successful. In fact, on average, trans women after a few months of hormone therapy have lower testosterone levels than cisgender women.
That's what happened to me. I mean,
Yeah.
my testosterone level was at about 16, but it's now, after HRT, it's now at 0.4. So it's now a lot lower than the average cisgender woman.
Yeah, and that's very typical. So
Yeah.
on average, transgender female athletes will be carrying less testosterone than the women that they are competing against. And so this idea that, oh, they have a big current testosterone advantage is certainly not true. Now, there are some legacy effects, particularly with muscle mass and strength and height as well. But one of the things that people talk about, well, people will say, yes, trans women have advantages even after hormone therapy, and it's true. But trans women also have disadvantages after hormone therapy, because what happens is that our frames, our skeletal frames, don't get a lot smaller, but we lose substantial amounts of muscle mass, and our aerobic capacities are greatly reduced. So we have these larger frames that are now being powered with lower muscle and lower aerobic capacity.
It's a smaller engine, isn't it?
Yes.
Really, effectively.
In fact, that's what I've said many a time, is it's like a big car with a small engine competing against a small car with a small engine. And so if you watch tape of trans women athletes, there is a quickness disadvantage, often an endurance disadvantage. Recovery from hard effort, too, is another area where trans women are often disadvantaged with respect to cisgender women. And so these advantages and disadvantages will play out differently in different sports.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating subject, and it's very difficult to know exactly where to draw the line, because it's one thing just in going about every day, equality and everything is, yes, absolutely right. But in competitive sports, sports can be won or lost on a fraction of a second, and so it is very difficult knowing exactly where to draw the line, isn't it?
It is. But again, the fact that trans women have advantages shouldn't necessarily be disqualifying, because we allow advantages in sport. You know, I'm going to be talking to Martina Navratilova, and for instance, we let left-handed players compete against right-handed players, and left-handed players have advantages in many sports, including tennis. So we allow, that's an advantage we allow. We allow the left-handed athletes to compete against the right-handed athletes, even though they have advantages. We don't, however, allow heavyweight boxers to get into the ring with flyweight boxers. So the question isn't, are there advantages? The question is, can two groups, population groups, compete against one another in meaningful sport? And if they can, they should be in the same category. And if they can't, they shouldn't. And so if we go back to the heavyweight boxer thing, putting a big boxer into a ring with a little boxer, that's not meaningful sport. It doesn't tell us anything interesting about the relative abilities of the two boxers. The big boxer wins every time. But left-handed athletes and right-handed athletes can engage in meaningful sport. So the real question, the real thing you want to study is, can trans women and cis women compete against one another in meaningful sport? And for the most part, the data seems to say yes to this point. There's still lots of work to be done.
Yeah. And what's your views on women who have naturally higher testosterone levels? So such as if they have, I think you're saying that if they had polycystic ovaries, I think that was a condition that causes it, or if they were intersex, maybe then they would have. What's your views about that?
So again, it's important to look at the numbers involved. Polycystic ovary syndrome can raise testosterone to somewhat over 2. In very severe PCOS cases, you can get testosterone levels up to 4 nanomoles per liter. And, that does give women with PCOS a certain amount of advantage. Women with PCOS are overrepresented in sport, but it's not anywhere near the advantage that male levels of testosterone have. So, if on the other hand we're talking about an intersex athlete who is born with a Y chromosome with internal testes and functioning androgen receptors, all three of those factors, then when that athlete goes through puberty, they go through a male-type puberty, and they gain all of the advantages, including male testosterone levels in adulthood. And so I think the recent ruling by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, it was a difficult ruling, but a very correct ruling. And they said that the IAAF was justified in setting a limit at 5 nanomoles per liter for women with differences of sexual development, or DSDs, which are a certain classification of intersex women.
Well, thanks ever so much for taking part in this vlog. It's been fascinating, and good luck with your chat with Martina. You'll have to let me know how it goes.
I will. It should be a very interesting day.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much. And thanks very much for watching. And I shall look forward to seeing you on the next vlog.